They called her cold before they ever learned her name. The women of Silver Creek whispered that the rancher's mail-order bride was too educated, too proud, and too different to ever belong in their little town. They ignored her at church, turned away when she offered help, and even smiled as rumors spread behind her back. But everything changed the night fire consumed the ranch. A little girl disappeared into a deadly snowstorm, and the same woman they had rejected walked into the freezing darkness without a second thought. While everyone else feared they would never return, she risked her own life to save a child who wasn't even her own. Then, when the truth behind the fire and a ruthless landowner's betrayal was finally exposed, the entire town was forced to face one painful question. How could they have judged the one person who loved them enough to sacrifice everything? Stay until the end, because this unforgettable story proves that sometimes God's greatest blessings arrive wearing the face everyone else chooses to reject. Spring sunlight warmed Silver Creek while cool mountain winds carried pine fragrance across quiet fields, promising hope before hidden judgment quietly awakened today there. Margaret Sullivan, 31, possessed graceful posture, chestnut hair, thoughtful hazel eyes, unwavering integrity, quietly endured dismissal. Cincinnati Academy closed permanently, leaving dedicated teacher unemployed despite remarkable accomplishments and resilience intact inside always. Years volunteering as compassionate nurse strengthened Margaret's confidence whenever frightened families needed calm guidance immediately together. She refused two respectable suitors because neither respected independent purpose, convictions, professional calling, nor compassionate ambitions completely. Margaret carried quiet loneliness beneath disciplined composure, fearing usefulness mattered less than obedient appearances everywhere surrounding women. One February morning, an honest letter unexpectedly offered possibility beyond familiar disappointments and silent expectations forever. Jacob Whitmore, 39, stood broad-shouldered, rugged, square-jawed, wearing thick brown beard beneath weathered determination every single day. Patient hardship following family tragedy quietly shaped Jacob into dependable strength instead of bitter resentment toward fate. His older brother and gentle sister-in-law died during devastating smallpox, leaving heartbreaking responsibility behind unexpectedly forever. Rose Whitmore, 8, appeared tiny, pale, golden-haired, blue-eyed, painfully timid, avoiding strangers after unbearable childhood grief entirely. Jacob admitted practical needs honestly, seeking partnership, family, shared burdens, never pretending glamorous frontier dreams existed anywhere. Margaret admired refreshing honesty because flattering promises previously disguised selfish intentions beneath polished, gentlemanly smiles repeatedly. She answered thoughtfully, asking whether capable women inspired respect instead of insecurity within hardworking households everywhere. Jacob smiled quietly, reading unexpected question, appreciating courage hidden inside carefully chosen straightforward words without hesitation. Their respectful correspondence gradually revealed matching values, practical kindness, emotional restraint, steadfast responsibility, and sincere curiosity together. Margaret accepted invitation after prayerful reflection, believing uncertain hope deserved greater courage than comfortable disappointment alone. She packed cherished books, modest dresses, nursing supplies, treasured memories, then embraced grieving parents before departing westward. Long railway miles carried anxious anticipation alongside lingering doubts about unfamiliar landscapes, strangers, and uncertain belonging ahead. Margaret silently rehearsed introductions, fearing rejection less than sacrificing authentic character for shallow acceptance ever again. Silver Creek Station bustled noisily when steam surrounded waiting families, merchants, curious children, and watchful neighbors alike. Jacob immediately recognized Margaret's composed bearing before she noticed his calm, observant expression across crowded platforms together. Margaret approached confidently, carrying heavy suitcase without requesting assistance, surprising silently watching townspeople nearby immediately together. Jacob respectfully lifted luggage while admiring determined independence rather than feeling threatened by remarkable confidence displayed naturally. Their wagon rolled peacefully through endless grasslands beneath brilliant skies, accompanied mostly by thoughtful, companionable silence together. Margaret asked intelligent questions regarding soil conditions, livestock health, seasonal drainage, revealing genuine curiosity immediately afterward. Jacob answered carefully, appreciating meaningful conversation, replacing awkward compliments, discovering unexpected intellectual companionship during travel together. Rose waited nervously outside farmhouse doorway, clutching worn cloth rabbit, avoiding unfamiliar faces with frightened caution instinctively. Margaret knelt gently, smiling warmly without forcing conversation, respecting frightened child's invisible emotional boundaries completely always. Rose whispered nothing, yet accepted offered storybook, revealing fragile trust beneath overwhelming sorrow inside slowly emerging. Margaret explored farmhouse thoughtfully, noticing practical improvements without criticizing cherished family traditions or meaningful memories carefully. She reorganized kitchen shelves efficiently, creating smoother routines benefiting everyone without unnecessary attention or dramatic praise afterward. Jacob quietly observed thoughtful changes, recognizing intelligence expressed through consistent actions rather than impressive speeches daily everywhere. Evening conversations remained brief, yet meaningful, gradually replacing uncertainty with growing mutual confidence beside crackling fireplace nightly. Margaret carefully reviewed ranch accounts after supper, discovering suspicious feed invoices repeating identical unexplained overcharges consistently monthly. Numbers revealed deliberate deception spanning 3 exhausting years, quietly draining valuable ranch savings without immediate detection previously. Jacob studied evidence carefully, astonished someone exploited hardworking trust through calculated dishonesty for personal profit repeatedly together. He thanked Margaret sincerely, realizing partnership already strengthened burdens impossible carrying completely alone before meeting unexpectedly. Meanwhile, curious neighbors exchanged whispered assumptions, misunderstanding quiet confidence as prideful arrogance toward hardworking frontier families everywhere. Beatrice Coleman, sturdy, sharp-eyed, outspoken grocery owner, eagerly encouraged suspicious gossip beneath friendly neighborhood conversations every afternoon. She insisted educated city women rarely respected honest ranching families, influencing uncertain listeners through persistent confidence continually. Margaret sensed distant stares during errands, choosing dignity instead of defensive arguments despite growing emotional isolation inside. Jacob noticed painful exclusion quietly unfolding, yet hoped patience might soften hardened opinions before confrontation became unavoidable eventually. Neither realized hidden prejudice already spread faster than truth across Silver Creek. Sunday church bells echoed across Silver Creek while hopeful sunlight disguised invisible walls surrounding Margaret's determined heart today. Margaret entered modest church calmly, wearing simple blue dress, braided chestnut hair, carrying quiet dignity despite anxious anticipation everywhere. Congregation members smiled politely before conversations dissolved abruptly whenever Margaret approached familiar, welcoming circles throughout gathering together. Beatrice Coleman deliberately welcomed newcomers warmly, while carefully leaving Margaret standing alone beside untouched refreshments without acknowledgement whatsoever. Rose watched silent rejection carefully, clutching tiny wooden doll, confused why kindness received unexpected coldness from smiling adults. Margaret accepted isolation gracefully, refusing resentment because bitterness always destroyed hearts before changing stubborn minds anywhere completely. Jacob arrived late after repairing broken fencing, immediately noticing Margaret sitting alone beside distant chapel windows quietly afterward. He joined Margaret naturally without hesitation, ignoring curious glances exchanged among longtime neighbors throughout crowded fellowship hall together. Lunch tables gradually filled while one empty chair beside Margaret remained deliberately untouched despite available, welcoming opportunities nearby. Rose quietly carried her own plate toward Margaret, choosing family comfort instead of fearful public acceptance that afternoon. Several women exchanged disappointed whispers, believing Jacob's household encouraged unnecessary pride instead of proper community traditions always. Margaret thanked Rose gently, hiding deep emotional wounds beneath calm composure, protecting vulnerable hope from public humiliation carefully. Monday morning brought unexpected urgency when frightened mother Rebecca Lawson rushed carrying feverish young son desperately inside town. Rebecca Lawson, slender blonde widow, hard-working seamstress, exhausted after losing husband during mining collapse, begged urgently for immediate help. Harold Bennett, 53, gray-haired physician, proud, respected, thick mustache, disliked challenges after decades practicing unquestioned medicine faithfully. Harold examined trembling boy confidently, prescribing strong spirits despite alarming dehydration Margaret immediately recognized with growing concern. Margaret respectfully requested cooler compresses, clean water, careful observation, explaining dangerous fever progression through measured reasoning calmly. Harold frowned deeply, accusing Margaret publicly of embarrassing experienced physicians through reckless female arrogance before everyone present. Embarrassed spectators avoided Margaret's supportive gaze, fearing disagreement with respected authority might damage cherished local reputations permanently. Rebecca hesitated tearfully, recognizing Margaret's compassionate confidence despite overwhelming pressure from surrounding judgmental neighbors watching silently. Jacob entered clinic unexpectedly delivering supplies, immediately sensing dangerous tension surrounding frightened family and determined Margaret inside. Margaret quietly explained medical concerns without raising voice, emphasizing child's worsening condition rather than personal wounded pride carefully. Jacob supported Margaret firmly, requesting Harold reconsider because practical evidence deserved honest attention above stubborn tradition always. Harold refused stubbornly, dismissing both arguments before storming angrily into neighboring examination room without further discussion immediately. Rebecca secretly followed Margaret's instructions overnight, applying cool cloths, gentle hydration, patient observation until dawn faithfully together. Morning sunlight revealed dramatic improvement as fever subsided gradually, restoring exhausted child's peaceful breathing and hopeful color beautifully. Rebecca embraced Margaret gratefully outside clinic, publicly acknowledging compassionate wisdom before astonished townspeople gathered nearby unexpectedly. Harold remained silent, wounded pride preventing simple gratitude despite undeniable evidence, proving Margaret's careful judgment completely correct. Beatrice dismissed miraculous recovery casually, insisting coincidence explained everything better than trusting educated outsider women ever consistently. Rumors twisted Margaret's helpful intervention into dangerous interference, spreading faster than truthful gratitude throughout surrounding ranches daily. Jacob confronted whispered gossip calmly, declaring Margaret's courage saved innocent life when hesitation nearly invited irreversible tragedy yesterday. Several ranchers respected Jacob deeply, yet long-standing prejudice outweighed reasonable testimony inside uncertain hearts across Silver Creek still. Margaret returned home quietly, questioning whether honesty alone could ever overcome comfortable misunderstanding among fearful neighbors permanently. Rose found Margaret reading beside evening fireplace, carefully placing wildflowers inside weathered ceramic pitcher without speaking first softly. Margaret smiled genuinely, touched because silent gestures sometimes carried deeper affection than confident conversations ever managed together. Rose whispered, "Aunt Maggie," trembling slightly before shy smile transformed grieving child's fragile expression into unexpected warmth forever. Margaret hugged Rose gently, feeling lonely burdens lighten beneath innocent trust patiently growing through shared daily tenderness together. Jacob witnessed heartfelt moments silently, realizing unexpected family bonds formed stronger foundations than public approval ever possibly could. Weeks passed peacefully until smoky twilight carried unfamiliar burning scent across western pastures toward frightened household unexpectedly together. Jacob sprinted outside immediately, discovering towering flames consuming spacious horse barn beneath fierce evening winds relentlessly everywhere. Margaret organized frightened ranch hands efficiently, forming water lines while protecting terrified horses from collapsing wooden beams carefully. Rose safely sheltered younger stable helper Tommy Ellis, 12-year-old freckled orphan, courageous despite trembling, overwhelming fear throughout disaster. Flames finally weakened before midnight, leaving blackened ruins where trusted animals once rested peacefully every ordinary evening together. Margaret discovered strange kerosene traces beside broken rear entrance, sensing deliberate sabotage instead of accidental misfortune immediately afterward. Jacob examined suspicious boot prints carefully, understanding someone intentionally attacked everything precious his family finally rebuilt together. Distant darkness swallowed unknown culprit while frightened silence settled across Silver Creek. Winter clouds gathered above Silver Creek, while smoke still drifted from Jacob's ruined barn at dawn. Jacob searched the ashes carefully, believing someone had attacked the ranch rather than suffered accidental misfortune. Margaret followed the rear fence line, where narrow wagon tracks curved toward the frozen creek bank. She discovered fresh iron nails hammered into broken boards, proving an intruder had repaired his escape route. Jacob measured the wheel spacing, then compared those marks with delivery wagons commonly entering Silver Creek. Margaret recorded every detail inside her notebook, trusting patient observation more than frightened speculation or angry accusation. They questioned nearby ranch hands, but several men avoided eye contact and offered suspiciously identical answers. Owen Mercer, a 68-year-old blacksmith with white hair and powerful arms, finally requested privacy before speaking. Owen was honest but cautious because wealthy cattlemen had destroyed smaller businesses after public disagreements before. He remembered a covered wagon passing after midnight, traveling south without lanterns during unusually cold weather. The wagon belonged to Victor Hayes, according to a distinctive wheel rim Owen had repaired recently. Victor Hayes, 47, was broad-shouldered, silver-bearded, sharply dressed, and admired for calculated generosity throughout town. A devastating drought had hardened Victor years earlier, teaching him that mercy invited weakness and financial ruin. He controlled the region's largest cattle operation and expected poorer neighbors to accept his authority without resistance. Victor welcomed Jacob politely at his mansion, offering coffee while pretending concern about the destructive barn fire. Margaret noticed survey maps partly concealed beneath Victor's desk, showing a railroad line crossing Jacob's eastern pasture. Victor repeated his purchase offer, claiming the damaged ranch now required more money than Jacob possessed. Jacob refused calmly, stating his brother's grave and Rose's future made the property impossible to surrender. Outside Victor's gate, Margaret explained the railroad would multiply land values once construction officially began there. They realized Victor wanted Jacob frightened, isolated, and financially desperate before the railroad company announced its route. Margaret later overheard merchants repeating rumors that her strange remedies had caused several cattle illnesses nearby. Beatrice repeated those accusations cautiously, though shame from Rose's rescue had weakened her certainty considerably already. Margaret understood Victor had purchased gossip because prejudice offered cheaper weapons than hired violence or legal disputes. Jacob wanted immediate confrontation, but Margaret urged patience until evidence could survive Victor's influence over local officials. Sheriff Samuel Brooks agreed quietly, promising discreet help while warning that suspicion alone could not justify arrest. Samuel, a tall 45-year-old veteran with cropped black hair, carried authority softened by battlefield compassion toward others. That evening, the first winter storm arrived early, burying fences beneath rapidly deepening snowdrifts around the ranch. Rose stepped outside briefly after hearing a frightened lamb crying beyond the eastern pasture's broken gate. The child followed tiny hoofprints toward the pine woods, unaware fierce wind had erased her return trail. Tommy Ellis noticed Rose missing near supper and discovered her abandoned scarf beside the livestock enclosure. Jacob's face drained instantly, while Margaret forced terror aside and gathered lanterns, blankets, rope, and medicine. They entered the storm before volunteers arrived, following scattered footprints disappearing beneath fresh snow toward the forest. Jacob shouted Rose's name repeatedly, while Margaret examined snapped branches and shallow impressions beside frozen ravines carefully. Hours passed, and freezing wind numbed Margaret's injured hands, yet guilt drove her relentlessly farther forward. A faint cry finally reached her beneath a fallen pine, nearly swallowed by the roaring blizzard. Rose lay trapped under heavy branches, shielding the frightened lamb against her chest despite dangerous cold. Margaret crawled beneath the trunk, comforting Rose while loosening branches with bleeding, trembling fingers in darkness. The tree shifted suddenly, crushing Margaret's left leg as she pushed Rose safely beyond its weight. Jacob reached them moments later, lifting branches with desperate strength until Rose escaped into his arms. Rescuers arrived behind Samuel, carrying ropes and blankets while horses struggled through waist-deep drifts nearby together. Margaret refused assistance until Rose received warmth, revealing devotion stronger than pain across her pale face. Jacob gathered Margaret against him before everyone, no longer hiding feelings strengthened through hardship and shared responsibility. "If I lose you, this ranch will never feel like home again," Jacob confessed openly. Townspeople lowered their eyes, realizing the woman they rejected had risked everything for a grieving child. Beyond the lantern light, Victor watched silently, understanding Margaret's courage had begun. Relentless winter tightened around Silver Creek, burying roads beneath heavy snow and unforgiving sheets of glittering ice everywhere. Margaret recovered slowly beside the farmhouse fireplace, refusing idleness despite lingering pain spreading through her injured left leg. Jacob insisted Margaret rest properly, revealing quiet tenderness replacing guarded restraint after their desperate mountain rescue together. Rose remained constantly nearby, reading borrowed storybooks softly because peaceful voices eased Margaret's restless nights without frightening memories. Morning thunder echoed unexpectedly as enormous ice floes smashed against Silver Creek's only wooden bridge without warning. Villagers rushed helplessly outside, watching frozen water tear, supporting beams apart before carrying shattered timbers downstream forever. The collapsed bridge isolated Silver Creek completely, preventing supply wagons, doctors, and law officers from reaching anyone. Fear spread faster than snowfall because winter food reserves already appeared dangerously smaller than previous difficult seasons. Victor Hayes publicly offered reassuring speeches, promising generous assistance while secretly celebrating unexpected opportunity beneath confident smiles. Margaret noticed Victor watching frightened crowds carefully, measuring desperation instead of sharing genuine concern with struggling families. That afternoon, Margaret visited the general store, searching quietly for medicine needed treating elderly neighbors recovering from influenza. Behind stacked flour barrels, Margaret accidentally overheard unfamiliar voices whispering about hidden wagons arriving before midnight tomorrow. One speaker mentioned Victor's private warehouse, while laughing that hungry families would blame Jacob after disappearing supplies. Margaret remained perfectly motionless until footsteps faded, memorizing every sentence before carefully slipping outside unnoticed afterward completely. She hurried home despite aching legs, immediately explaining everything to Jacob beside the glowing kitchen stove calmly. Jacob believed every word because Margaret never exaggerated danger nor manipulated frightened people through dramatic emotional claims. Sheriff Samuel Brooks listened thoughtfully, recognizing suspicious timing connecting destroyed barns, broken bridges, spreading rumors, and disappearing supplies. Samuel proposed gathering undeniable evidence before confronting Victor because powerful men escaped accusations lacking convincing proof repeatedly. After sunset, they concealed themselves inside abandoned grain sheds overlooking Victor's heavily guarded warehouse near frozen riverbanks silently. Snow muffled every movement, while freezing winds concealed whispered conversations between Victor's hired workers throughout darkness beautifully. 3 loaded wagons arrived quietly carrying sacks stolen from Silver Creek's emergency grain storage beneath heavy canvas coverings. Margaret recognized identical grain markings distributed earlier through church charity collections supporting struggling widows during harsh weather. Jacob carefully recorded wagon numbers, while Samuel noted workers' names inside weatherproof leather notebook beneath flickering lantern light. One nervous laborer repeatedly glanced behind himself, suggesting troubled conscience beneath forced loyalty toward Victor's dangerous leadership already. His name was Daniel Foster, 27, lean, sandy-haired, humble, burdened by gambling debts after losing everything previously. Victor threatened imprisoning Daniel's younger brother unless stolen deliveries continued without questions or hesitation throughout difficult winter months. Samuel quietly approached Daniel later, promising lawful protection if honest testimony replaced fearful silence before innocent neighbors suffered. Daniel trembled visibly before admitting Victor orchestrated every rumor, theft, and deliberate attack against Jacob's struggling ranch personally. Meanwhile, Victor prepared another public meeting, intending blaming missing grain upon Jacob's supposed financial desperation before frightened citizens. Crowds gathered anxiously inside the town square, hoping accusations might explain growing hunger threatening every household equally now. Victor spoke confidently, portraying Jacob as desperate enough stealing supplies while pretending heroic concern for vulnerable families everywhere. Jacob remained silent because Samuel requested patience until every witness and physical evidence stood prepared before everyone completely. Suddenly, Rose stepped forward, clutching an old handkerchief forgotten inside burned stable ruins during frightening rescue earlier. Dark pine resin stained one corner, matching sticky barrels discovered beside Victor's warehouse the previous freezing evening exactly. Rose explained finding the cloth beside unfamiliar boot prints before flames consumed frightened horses and collapsing wooden stalls completely. Margaret carefully unfolded matching survey papers, proving Victor planned purchasing abandoned properties after creating widespread financial panic deliberately. Samuel presented Daniel before astonished townspeople, allowing frightened young ranch hand finally describing Victor's calculated criminal scheme publicly. Daniel admitted receiving stolen payments, revealing Victor ordered false rumors portraying Margaret as dangerous city, which repeatedly everywhere. Silence settled heavily before angry voices erupted, replacing fearful suspicion with righteous outrage against calculated deception throughout town. Victor attempted escaping horseback, but Samuel's deputies surrounded every exit before determined citizens blocked remaining snowy streets together. Iron handcuffs closed around Victor's wrists while defeated arrogance disappeared beneath bitter realization and irreversible public disgrace forever. Beatrice Coleman stepped forward slowly, tears filling sharp gray eyes once hardened by pride and careless assumptions alone. She apologized sincerely before everyone, admitting Margaret's courage had exposed lies while preserving Silver Creek's remaining hope together. Other families thanked Margaret openly for protecting children, healing neighbors, uncovering truth, and refusing hatred despite endless rejection. Jacob reached Margaret's hand quietly beneath falling snow, knowing respect had finally grown where prejudice once ruled completely. Warm church bells echoed across Silver Creek as hopeful hearts welcomed a brighter future built upon one peaceful winter morning. Gentle sunlight covered Silver Creek, where hope had quietly replaced years of fear together. Nearly 1 year had passed since Victor's arrest transformed broken trust into lasting unity throughout the valley. Jacob rebuilt every damaged stable stronger, believing difficult seasons always rewarded determined hands and faithful hearts eventually together. Margaret walked confidently without her cane, although cold mornings still reminded her of lingering painful sacrifice gently. Rose had grown taller, brighter, and happier, laughing freely across fields once shadowed by frightening childhood memories alone. Neighbors greeted Margaret warmly wherever she traveled, replacing suspicious whispers with sincere smiles and grateful conversations every day. Families regularly visited the farmhouse seeking advice because Margaret patiently listened before offering thoughtful encouragement or practical solutions. Margaret noticed many women secretly wished learning beyond household responsibilities but feared criticism from traditional community expectations. She discussed those dreams with Jacob beside their fireplace while snow drifted quietly beyond frosted farmhouse windows peacefully. Jacob immediately supported her vision, believing education strengthened families just as honest labor strengthened prosperous ranches forever together. Construction began during early spring upon the hillside where Victor once demanded Jacob surrender valuable property permanently before. Volunteers carried lumber daily because everyone wanted helping build something representing hope rather than painful memories from yesterday. By midsummer, a welcoming wooden schoolhouse overlooked blooming meadows where frightened uncertainty had once ruled every conversation completely. Margaret opened free evening classes, welcoming women, young children, struggling laborers, and elderly neighbors eager for learning together. Students practiced reading aloud proudly, while Margaret celebrated every small achievement with encouraging patience and unwavering gentle kindness. Rebecca Lawson volunteered gladly, helping younger mothers balance lessons with caring responsibilities after difficult working days every week. Tommy Ellis eagerly mastered arithmetic, dreaming someday managing his own successful ranch through knowledge instead of simple luck. Rose proudly organized worn books carefully, believing every borrowed story carried another family's future inside fragile pages forever. Jacob quietly watched evening classes often, realizing Margaret's greatest gift reached hearts before changing minds through compassionate example. Inspired townspeople collected donations, providing desks, blankets, lamps, slates, notebooks, and precious textbooks for growing classrooms together happily. Harold Bennett visited unexpectedly, carrying several sturdy wooden crates across the school's welcoming front porch one afternoon. Harold's proud posture appeared humbler now, while silver mustache framed an honest smile, replacing former stubborn arrogance completely. Years treating isolated families had convinced Harold experience alone guaranteed wisdom until Margaret courageously challenged dangerous certainty publicly. He donated surgical instruments, medicine bottles, bandages, and examination equipment, apologizing sincerely before grateful students and neighbors together. Margaret accepted everything warmly because forgiveness healed wounded communities more completely than resentment ever could alone afterward always. Jacob converted another nearby building into a modest community clinic, standing proudly beside the new evening school forever. Every patient received compassionate treatment regardless of wealth because Margaret refused allowing poverty deciding someone's medical future again. Samuel Brooks often visited proudly, reminding travelers Silver Creek protected justice through ordinary people choosing courage over fear. Daniel Foster managed grain supplies honestly, rebuilding damaged reputation through faithful service benefiting every struggling family throughout winter. Beatrice Coleman spent countless evenings stitching delicate white fabric beneath lamplight, despite aging hands growing increasingly unsteady lately. She finished Margaret's wedding dress carefully, sewing every graceful stitch with humble gratitude, replacing former painful prejudice completely. Christmas Eve arrived beautifully, surrounding Silver Creek with sparkling snow reflecting warm candlelight from every welcoming household window. Children gathered outside the school singing joyful hymns while parents exchanged homemade gifts celebrating peaceful new beginnings together cheerfully. Margaret embraced Rose gently after the final song echoed beneath clear winter stars above the quiet valley. Rose smiled through joyful tears before whispering softly, "Merry Christmas, Mom," with complete trust and endless love forever. Margaret wept openly because one precious word healed loneliness carried silently across countless difficult years before arriving here. Jacob stepped forward calmly, holding a simple handcrafted ring beneath glowing lanterns outside the beautiful new schoolhouse together. He knelt proudly where neighbors once urged selling worthless land, choosing lasting love instead of fearful compromise forever. Jacob asked Margaret becoming his wife, promising every tomorrow would honor sacrifice, faith, kindness, and unwavering partnership always. Margaret answered yes immediately, while joyful applause echoed across snowy fields surrounding grateful families celebrating miraculous transformation together. The entire town attended their wedding, filling every wooden pew inside the beautifully decorated little church with gratitude. Beatrice adjusted Margaret's elegant gown carefully, smiling proudly before embracing her like beloved family, without lingering hesitation anymore. Harold stood first beside donation tables, encouraging fellow physicians supporting Margaret's growing clinic through generous medical contributions annually. Years passed peacefully until travelers praised Silver Creek throughout Colorado as a remarkable place, changing countless ordinary lives forever. Women arrived seeking education confidently, because Margaret's evening school welcomed determined dreams without prejudice, ridicule, or unnecessary barriers. Families traveled remarkable distances because Jacob and Margaret's free clinic treated everyone with equal dignity and compassionate respect. Visitors rarely remembered Margaret as the mysterious woman arriving from the distant city, carrying quiet hidden sorrows alone. Instead, generations remembered courageous kindness transformed strangers into family, proving faithful love forever defeated fear and prejudice. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not a sudden answer from heaven, but an ordinary person whom God places in our path at exactly the right moment. Margaret never changed Silver Creek through power or revenge. She changed it through courage, compassion, forgiveness, and unwavering faith when everyone else chose fear. In our own lives, we may never face a burning barn or a winter blizzard, but every day God gives us opportunities to choose kindness over judgment and love over prejudice. If this story touched your heart, please leave a comment sharing where you've seen God's grace in your own life. Like this video, and subscribe for more inspiring stories of faith and hope. May God bless you, protect your family, and fill your home with peace, strength, and His unfailing love. Amen.